Broken Mirror. Professor Chinmoy Guha will be discussing his new book based on his conversations with artists and thinkers. Professor Guha is Professor of English and former head, Department of English at the University of Calcutta. He has written numerous books and collections of essays and 2 anthologies of 20th century French poetry. He is also a recipient of several prestigious honors, including the Knighthood of Academic Palms from France. In conversation with him is Paroma Roy Chowdhury. Paroma Roy Chowdhury is a communication, advocacy, and public affairs professional with more than 2 decades of experience across global organizations. Currently, she is advisor outreach to the board and the Vice Chancellor's office at Ashoka University, India's best-known private university. Joining them on stage is also our festival director, Malavika Banerjee. May I request all our panelists to come and take their seats, and I hand over now to Paromadi.
Hello. Good afternoon. We know that this is a weekday afternoon, so we are facing a bit of challenge. But we are here for a very important conversation today. We are going to talk about the book, which is Broken Mirrors, written by Chinmoy Guha, who's a very noted public intellectual in Calcutta, and our redoubtable Malavika Banerjee, who puts together this festival year after tremendous effort. And I know, having been associated with them, how much of conversation and collaboration that needs. So we both are, we should be grateful to her for the platform. And so this is an interesting topic because we are actually in an era of hyper-connectedness. We are from the time we get up to the time we go to sleep, we're constantly looking at the phone, being on social media, replying to messages, making calls. And but if you look at mental health statistics, there are far greater number of depressives, far greater number of other mental health challenges because of extreme loneliness and isolation, which is a dichotomy of our age. The hyper-connectedness without any real conversation, real collaboration, and real ties. So we thought that this is very important as a topic. And Chinmoy Guha's book deals with a great deal of, we'll launch it after the session, a great deal of very interesting, in-depth conversation with artists and thinkers. We have Robidash Gupta, who some people in the audience will know, not very young people, but Mrinal Sen, Badal Sarkar, Mahashweta Devi, Tapan Roy Chowdhury, Purushottam Lal, Gayatri Spivak, Buddhadev Das Gupta. So Dipesh Chakraborty, Kunal Basu. I mean, we have a whole range of people, spanning the arts and thinkers and writing. So these are all very in-depth conversations. If you look at the book later and if you read it, they have talked about intensely personal issues and hitherto unknown facts, because these are conversations which are long, are in depth, conducted over time, and which is very different from the glib, facile chats that we have these days on the media or even in person. There's very little time to actually get into building relationships, drawing people out. So my first question would be and also if I may say so, because I come from the corporate world, collaboration is a huge theme there also. To this week in Davos, the chief theme of the festival is AI and the art of collaboration. McKinsey, who's going to produce a report on Davos, which is a really high-powered corporate meet, is and looks at collaboration again as a theme. So it's all over, really. So, but still, what I would like to ask Chinmoy is that what prompted you to write this book?
So thank you very much. You can hear me. So I thank Paroma and Malavika. She has, when she started this Kolkata Literary Meet, that was the basic theme. She wanted us to stretch out, to take us forward. Rimbaud wrote, the poet Arthur Rimbaud, who changed, revolutionized poetry in the 19th century, wrote to Paul Verlaine, the poet laureate, "Tendez-moi la main, je suis jeune, stretch me your hand, I'm young." So she did this. It was a very important moment in the cultural life of Bengal, because we needed to stretch out across disciplines, people of all walks of life, people who have written, who have tried to convey their ideas. So I think this is in the fitness of things that this book, Broken Mirror, Conversations with Artists and Thinkers, is being launched here, and she herself is present. I'm grateful to her, and to Paroma, of course. And what is important, we all know that the world is crumbling. The world is crumbling. I don't know whether it's the end of the world, as Fukuyama said, but it's almost like that. It's almost like that. Ideologies are empty now. No one believes in any ideology. See, Zizek said, ideologies are jouissance, but they only can give sexual excitement, nothing else. So in such a situation, when we are almost reaching the limit of our biological, sociological limits, at that stage, we have to find out a way out. And therefore, I started doing this. I was initially commissioned by Desh, which I was editing, I was the literary editor. And I was trying to reach out. And here you will find filmmakers, artists. We have Buddhadev Dasgupta speaking about his images in a very serious way. It is not a kind of surface conversation, which ends and people clap and the thing is over. It's not that. It stays with you. So I think I tried that, authors, filmmakers, scholars, artists, and critics. And it was a quest. For me, it was a quest for meaning. As Terry Gilton said, the meaning of meanings. In a situation where we cannot anymore differentiate between the image and the real. We are all taking selfies. A selfie is the last point of our self-centeredness. Why should I take the picture of myself? Well, others are there. So it shows how we are all islands in a globalized age. Look at the irony of it all. So that was the only way to stretch out, and it's not easy. Everybody is in his shell. And the true is the moment of the false. This is very important. I agree with Guy Debord that now the true is the moment of the false. You cannot separate the true from the false anymore. For example, you see a film, Towering Inferno, and you see the Twin Towers burning. Can you make a difference? Which is real and which is not? You cannot. So in such a situation, where virtual reality is ruling the roost, in that situation, I thought it was time to stretch out, and Kalidasa said, we must go to the best. So R.K. Dasgupta, Mrinal Sen, Badal Sarkar, Mahashweta Devi, Paroma Roy Chowdhury, Pilal, Shankho Ghosh, etc. Gayatri Di. And I had a conversation with Gayatri Di here only, thanks to Malavika. That's how we got connected with each other. So what is important is, I remember that dialogues are not just simple exchanges. Remember the dialogue started, think of Gargi and Jagobolko. Think of the 35 dialogues of Plato, where Socrates was the main character. So what is important is, this is part of civilization. Part of civilization. And the Renaissance meant dialogues. And look at this horticultural society, which Malavika would know. It was established in 1820, the year of the birth of Bidashagar, by William Carey. who constructed the Bengali language. So, two architects of Bengali, Keri and Vidyasagor, they converge. Just imagine. They converge, and what other venue can be more eloquent for a setting for conversations? So I think in a way it is much more fitting that things are happening here. And I was, my conversation was triggered off by a conversation. Sarth in his last 15 years did not write anything. He wrote his novels. He rejected them because they were fake, wrote plays. He thought they were fake, so rejected them. And then started writing his autobiography, which won the Nobel Prize, and immediately realized that it was fake. Otherwise, why should it win the Nobel Prize? Yes, he said, I'm an imposter. And then he started conversations. Art, attack me. And his student, Beni Levi, 15 days before his death, asked him, you are a hypocrite. You were talking about alienation, but you are enjoying life. And he said, exactement. That is exactly true. This is Jean-Paul Sartre. And he was being torn apart by the interviewer, and he responded candidly. So I thought, why can't you do it here? So I did my homework. That most important thing is, you can't sort of come over somewhere and start to talk. That could be surface talks that lead nowhere. So what is important is win over the trust of the man. And then only the dialogue begins. And then only Mahashweta Devi will say, I wanted to commit suicide. And then only Mridul Sen said, I said many things in public, but I know Satyajit Ray and us don't match. He's too big and I'm too small. He said that, candidly. He's egomapet ditium. And he said that in public. We're whispering to each other. So this is important. Whispers. In our moment of pain, cries and whispers. This is what it is.
Yeah. This is very, very important. That's fine. It's your book. So I wanted to ask Malavika, actually, because you have so many conversations, with your authors, with so many organizers and partners, sponsors, and I have been witness to some of that. And so to put this together. So my question is that, how have you actually won the trust of people that you work with? You've been working with, you're one of the people who have retained a lot of collaborators right from the beginning. Does trust play a big role, and how do you build that?
You earn their respect and love.
Yeah.
Thank you. It feels a little self-invited to be on this panel. But when Chinmoy actually said it might be a good idea and Paroma agreed, I thought, okay, why not? It's the first time I'm a delegate on a panel rather than a moderator here. So, what Chinmoy said about the conversation being something which is so critical to our civilization. Actually, if we think about it, conversations are what makes us human. And as Paroma said, there are many conversations that lie within the edifice of what we are sitting on. So there's the conversation where I first reach out to somebody like Chinmoy. There is a conversation where I first introduce myself to an author who stays in Canada or San Francisco or somewhere in Australia, and I have to introduce myself, I have to introduce the city, I have to put context to the city and say this was the second city of the Raj, and it is still a bustling metropolis which is considered a hub of culture. So this conversation is when I kind of try to peel the layers of what we are and who we are in Kolkata. And at the same time, I'm also listening to who this author is, who this speaker is, who I'm inviting on the basis of a book. So from the dead word, he suddenly starts communicating with me. And he comes alive through that whole process. And that conversation is the first level of conversing in a festival like this. Then comes the time of the festival, and it's conversed with, yesterday I was in conversation with Abraham Verghese, and I was a little embarrassed when he spoke about an email I wrote to him about the book he had written, The Covenant of Water, and he said that it kind of spoke to him and it was a keeper, to use his term. But when I met him, I realized he's this cool guy, but the book is very intense, and you think he'll be one wound up person, and he's this relaxed person who's roaming around Calcutta, trying to catch up as much of the city as he can. He has opinions about who he wants to listen to. So, there are layers upon layers. It's like, you're building a palimpsest of a festival where one conversation falls over the other, and the last layer is what you see on this platform. And that's what really drove me to agreeing to be part of this, because this book actually is not a set of interviews. It's a set of conversations. I read the one by Shanko Ghosh. Shanko Babu inaugurated the festival in 2014. And he is having a conversation. He says, a person who's as inadequate as me is asking you this. And Shankoda says, no, but you are a great scholar in French. So that doesn't happen in an interview. So it is a set of conversations. And as I've been building on this festival, I've realized that the conversation is what we should be celebrating as much as the books. Because we are in a society where people can abuse each other without knowing who they are. They can praise each other madly without knowing who the other person really is. So this is a quiet space. It's an anti-debate, actually, where I speak, then he speaks, then you listen. If you have questions, you ask us. It's so civilized, and I think that is what actually makes this whole format of a literature festival, spread across this country, across the globe, because it's a quiet space where we somehow rediscover the art of conversing rather than messaging.
Yes, that's, I think, a very, very important point, because civil society today is extremely polarized, as you see. I mean, there's little civility left in it. So to have a space where you can actually have deep conversations freely is very, very rare. And particularly, again, in a global world where, as she was rightly pointing out, people may not have context of your country, of the literary landscape. I have met some extremely interesting people in Kalam, and before in Jaipur as well. The authors from around the world. There was a French cartoonist, Nicholas Wield, I think 2 years before, and we happened to have a really frank chat on Gaza and Ukraine, which was not really part of the agenda, though it was the session on diplomacy. And I was marveling at how impassioned he is and how much he felt deeply. And he said, if you go to Prague, you must do this and you must see that. And he was right. I visited the next year, and he was so right. And he was frank. I mean, his political position he was very, very clear about. And I'm still in touch with him. Occasionally, we chat. So I think this whole idea of the space and being able to talk freely without, biases, prejudices, and deep, thoughtful conversation.
Taking cue from what you said, actually, Saeed, who's a Palestinian, said that dialogues could dissolve cultural barriers and promote globalization. And if there are dialogues, she was speaking about Gaza and Ukraine, there wouldn't have been so much problem. There was a lack of dialogues. That is why there are communal tensions. There's a lack of dialogue because things are polarized. You either belong to Amra or Ora. In such a situation, only dialogues can help us out, and we can grope towards it. We can gravitate towards it. In platform like this helps us. I think it's a gain. It's not a pastime for us, it's a gain. When you go home, we are enlightened, illuminated, because dialogues can perhaps cover up the crevices and save us. And I think that in a world which is now clogged by this fragile planet, clogged by 6 billion people, and we need to talk, our bones need to talk, our arteries need to talk. And what other place than, I am sort of glorifying this place because I think it's important for us, because the first year that, yes, Baruch Spinoza said that dialogue is a way to love nature. And for Spinoza, God and nature are equivalent. So God, nature ke bhalobashar jonne, to end suffering, this is the best place. And Prakriti, Mon, আর সংলাপ, এই তিনটে এখানে মিশে গেছে. Nature, mind, and dialogue. What other place can give us this so much. So, and as Pascal said, man is a reed, the most feeble thing in nature, but he is a thinking reed. He is a thinking reed. And as Heidegger said, in this thought-provoking time, the most thought-provoking thing is that we are still not thinking. So let's begin to think, perhaps, and start the vibration, the wavelength, of which both Paroma and Malavika were talking.
I'm a professional communicator, and in one of the very large US corporations I worked in, we used to put together working groups to work on specific problems. And it was always ensured that there's a global representation. There would never be more than 2 Americans in a group. And it's very interesting how different nationalities approach different problems, and despite having similar training. So, and in those groups, conversations were possible because you were not locked into positions, and you all had to work together to arrive at a conclusion in a definite timeline, with a definitive timeline. So, but now I realize actually people were very carefully chosen in a way where conversation and dialogue would foster. So people who put together those groups, now I understand that they were put together with a specific purpose. So this is my question to both of them. I'll start with Chinmoy. What made you choose the people you spoke with? Was there a thought playing in the background? And Mala, after he's done, how do you really look at authors? I know there are new books and things, but do you really specifically look at qualities which will foster the spirit of dialogue?
No. What is important is, at a moment we are sort of confused between illusion and sacredness. There is a separate pseudo-wall with autonomous images. Images are more important. As I told you just now, representation is more important than the real. In such a situation, true is a moment of the false. There is no way out to save ourselves. So, and what Paroma was saying just now, connectivity, and here I met not only Gayatri Di, but also Mihaela Grieger, who spoke on Mircea Eliade. And I was ready to talk with her, prepared myself, earned her respect and trust, and had this conversation last year. So Romania and Calcutta, a connectivity that was established by Moitrey and Mircea, was once again revived here. And once again, day before yesterday, I talked with a Turkish author, excellent Turkish author, was talking about deep structure from the beginning. You have to pierce the veil. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Cosmetic talks, soap talks make no sense. You have to go deep and try to understand the psyche. Is it possible? I don't know. Freud expressed doubt about autobiographies. He said, this is all fake. I was reading a book by Bettelheim, and he quoted Freud, and he said that, well, this is fake. Somebody's talking about himself is fake. But can I go beyond that? Dipesh Chakraborty opens out, and talks highlights things which are important for him. The climate change, we are sort of forgetting the long life and giving importance to the short life. That is our problem around the world just now. So I think it's not easy, but connectivity is a great example. Here we found it, and I'm sure this will be fruitful in the long run, because we are so alone. Romain Rolland wrote in a letter to Kalidash Nag, I'm alone, seul. And he spoke with Rabindranath. Rabindranath went abroad to speak with Einstein, met him 3 times. Why? In a globalized world, we don't talk with each other. But when the world was not globalized, Gandhi learned from Tolstoy. Rabindranath spoke with a lot of people, even little Ranu. Dialogues can be so meaningful. I would like to talk with Riksha Pula one day, and I'm sure you'll learn more from him than from many books. As La Rochefoucauld said in the 17th century, বইয়ের চেয়ে মানুষকে পড়া অনেক বেশি জরুরি. I don't know whether it's totally true, but it's, yes, partially true. আগে মানুষটাকে বোঝার চেষ্টা করো। I can assure you that this is not another book. এখানে মানুষটাকে বুঝতে পারছি। You can read tons of books of Gayatri Di, but here you find the person, the woman. Not the interview here, but elsewhere. And মানুষটাকে শঙ্কর ঘোষকে বোঝা যাচ্ছে না। When I was asking political question, I was asking why has he become a cult figure? And he says, so all these questions are important. So সবসময় এমনি কথা শুনে বই বোঝা মানুষকে বোঝা যায় না, বই পড়ে বোঝা যায় না, ভিতরে যেতে হয়. And as Malavika was telling me the other day, that the WhatsApp University was started off, as Dalrymple said, by the failure of the writers to address the common man. So that is very, very important. Can you connect? I agree that we can connect nothing with nothing, as Eliot said, but we can always try.
Yeah, I mean, let me add one layer to the question I'm going to ask you. Does the person play a big role in your selection as well as the author? If you happen to know.
I think the author is what I'm looking at, because the book is the plinth on which I am, structuring this whole event. That said, I think who the person is comes into play when I'm setting up the panels and curating the festival. So, I try to make that work in a way that is, in a way that could engender a meaningful conversation. So if I'm putting 3 people, of course, the simplest thing is to put one person with the author. But even that is a challenge when I'm thinking who's going to speak to Chinmoy. I do keep a few markers in mind. And, I try to avoid some very obvious traps, which is, a new world of awareness and identity, which is completely commendable, tries to tell us don't do manners, don't always try to be inclusive. I completely believe all of this is achieved if one is just honest to one's complete neutrality in the matter of gender, in the matter of identities of different kind. You will get sheminas and manners and all of that. But what is at the bottom is a good conversation between a person who's totally understanding what he is speaking about and the author. And in panels too, I try to create themes which are, which everyone has something to contribute to. So these are the little things I try to do. And Chinmoyda didn't answer. And also I think one of the few good qualities I possess is that I'm a good listener. So I think you didn't answer the question about how you chose the conversations.
I also want to add one line so that you can answer that. In this era of hyper wokeness, as we were talking about, being extremely politically correct, the need to be politically correct, and as she was saying, Manals, you have to put one token woman in a panel, which is, these are the sort of demands that are made upon organizers and panelists and everything. So all this actually contribute, I feel, to the fakery, and not, it's a bit strong, but and not be authentic.
You're true. You're right. You're
So,
absolutely right.
I wanted to also ask you that in this, did any of this influence your selection? And what do you think on this generally as well, as far as conversations
Very
are concerned?
important question, actually, because conversations can degenerate to patronizing attitude and cronism, on the other hand. Oh, you're great, you're great. So it doesn't really help. I started with Jean-Paul Sartre, who was being asked by Benny Levy, student, you are a hypocrite. You said that you believe in loneliness, solitude, etc., alienation, when you were writing the Nausea in 1938, but you were actually enjoying your time in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. What is this? And what is the difference between a Nobel laureate and a restaurant waiter? And he said, there's no difference. I'm a Nobel laureate, I'm a failure, and the restaurant waiter is also a failure. So we connect. And the question that both of them asked is very important. সেটা হচ্ছে কেন কিভাবে এদের সিলেক্ট করলাম? দেখুন, সিলেক্ট করার একটা প্রধান জিনিস লোকটাকে ভালোবাসতে হবে, রেসপেক্ট করতে হবে। As Robin Wood, the critic, wrote on Satyajit Ray in the 70s, early 70s, those who criticize Satyajit Ray should earn the right to criticize him. If they should know the breathing of his films before criticizing him. That is very important. That is in the book of the Apu trilogy, which is perhaps the best work on him. So, এইটা খুব দরকার। তো আমি কাদের মনে হয়েছিল আমার exemplary icons। আমাদের I started with কালিদাস। কালিদাস বলছেন শ্রেষ্ঠ জনের কাছে যেতে হয়। শ্রেষ্ঠ জন কারা? So look at the names, মৃণাল দা, বাদল সরকার। And বাদল সরকার said যে আমি যখন I was doing এবং ইন্দ্রজিৎ, জানো চিন্ময়, I did not know theatre of the absurd. I did not know UNESCO. I did not know Samuel Beckett. I did not know Adamov and Arabal, but I was writing absurd theatre. Shomik Bandyopadhyay told me that এটা তো আপনার absurd theatre ইউনেস্কোর মতো বেকেটের মতো বলে আমি পড়িনি। So there are frank admissions, helplessness, pain, and therefore আমি এমন লোকের সঙ্গে the question that they asked যাদের সঙ্গে এখানে আরো অনেক লেখক ছিল। I also interviewed Father Dutien, whom I resurrected from nothingness, as you know, brought him back. And Father Dutien wrote Bengali like us, but I wanted pan-Indian figures. There was Alok Ranjan Dasgupta also. And এখানে আমি ভাবলাম মমতা শঙ্করকে নিয়ে এলাম। মমতা শঙ্করের নাচ, বাবা, মা, কি করে বাড়িতে বড় হচ্ছে, মা কতটা কড়া, like any other mother. এত রাত্রির হলো কেন, পড়াশোনা করছো না, এটসেট্রা এটসেট্রা, বাবাও তাই। তো এই করে মমতা শঙ্কর কি করে বড় হচ্ছেন, উদয় শঙ্কর আর মাটিতে বসে খেলা গল্প করছেন বাবা কাকা রবিশঙ্কর, তো সেইগুলো বলছেন। আমি বুঝতে পারছি যে একটা রক্তক্ষরণ হচ্ছে। টু লিভ এ লাইফ ইজ টু হ্যাভ স্কার্স, and I think some scars are here. That is my achievement, if any. It's not a full achievement. কিন্তু সবাই এখানে, যেমন বুদ্ধদেব দাশগুপ্ত, I like his images and I made him talk about his images. He talked about his images. কেন ইমেজটা করছে, লাল দরজাটা মানে কি? আস্তে 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 ভেতরে প্রবেশ করছি। At one point we realized that we are one. So, and I was telling Paroma that I started my conversational life with Satyajit Ray. Can you imagine that? At the age of 18, I was the editor of St. Xavier's magazine. So I went to his house. I was in first year, which means class 12 of today. So class 12 এর ছেলে সত্যজিৎ রায়ের সঙ্গে কথা বলে, he was very angry. তুমি আমার সময় নষ্ট কি আছে, তুমি কি জানো? So I talked about Penelope Houston, Penelope Gillette, William Pector, Maurice Sitton, and Paul Rotha and Richard Griffith. And he sat up and said, my God. And then he started his real conversation, which you won't find anywhere. He said, in my films, you'll find externalization of states of mind, like the dying butterflies in Oshoni Shanket, like the boat or the insect in the glass. Externalization of states of mind, as if I was listening to Antonioni. So he earned his respect, and that interview is not here, unfortunately, but lots of people. Bilal is very important. We all know Indian English literature was started off by him. So I selected him. Bilal was the first publisher of Indian English, Pritish Nondi. He was the first publisher of Nissim Ezekiel. He was the first publisher of Anita Desai, of Vikram Seth. They never acknowledged him, but he laid the stone. He prepared the path for them. So I thought Lal is important. With one eye, the other eye is lost, like Nababa Pataudi. He worked on. Without having an eye contact with the students, he could speak so graciously, so melodiously, so that revealingly. So, Martin Kempschen, for example, a German who translated Kothamrita, and Kothamrita is a dialogue. Kothamrita is a dialogue. So dialogues are everywhere. And remember one thing, dialogues are not for the pleasure of two people, it's for my knowledge. There's a film by Kieslowski called Camera Buff. The camera is looking everywhere and finally turns towards it himself. So when I'm interviewing Mrinalda or Badal Sarkar or Mahashweta Di or Shankar Ghosh or Franz Bhattacharya, the greatest translator of Bengali literature in the world, Buddhadev Dasgupta, Martin Kempschen, Dipesh Da, Mamata Shankar, etc., Chitra Banerjee, I was actually talking with myself. Attanushandhan. That's like the camera buff of Kieslowski. The camera at the end of the film turns towards himself. So actually I was talking with others to find myself.
Okay, so I just wanted to add one element. অথেন্টিসিটি ব্যাপারটা খুব ইম্পর্ট্যান্ট in a conversation and in dialogues. Particularly এখন আপনারা সবাই যারা সোশ্যাল মিডিয়ার সঙ্গে পরিচিত, অল্প বয়সীরা এখানে কেউ লিঙ্কডইন ব্যবহার করে? যারা লিঙ্কডইন ব্যবহার করেন তারা জানবেন যে বেশিরভাগ লিঙ্কডইন সিভি হচ্ছে ওয়ার্কস অফ ফিকশন। যদি অ্যান্ড অনেক ফেসবুক পোস্ট, টুইটার পোস্ট আর বেসিক্যালি সেলফ মার্কেটিং। It's not conversation, it's not genuine, authentic opinion. Social, so আর extreme narcissism, সেটা মানে ভয়ানকভাবে সোশ্যাল মিডিয়া ইনফ্লুয়েন্স করেছে এবং বাড়িয়েছে। তো এই পরিপ্রেক্ষিতে একটা অথেন্টিক কনভারসেশন করা খুব জরুরি এবং বেশিরভাগ লোকই সেটা করে না এবং করতে পারে না। So I also think that when we are doing these conversations or having dialogues, to ensure that it remains authentic and truthful is also important. I mean, would you agree?
Of course. And that's why books such as this is important, because what we really, I mean, I don't want to sound like an old person criticizing a newer generation, but I think we can all agree that rigor has become a very rare art in our academia. And whatever we do, the desire to go deep, the desire to do more and to know more is something that we should strive for. I don't think we value rigor as much as a preceding generation did. And actually my concern is, who is the youngest person in this book?
Chitra Banerjee.
Yeah, and she
you
is,
did
yes, and she's in her 60s. So I don't know whether the kind of rigor, I'm not dissing a whole generation. Yesterday we had a delightful conversation with Manu Pillai and Shujan, and both of them are very young. And Angela Saini is also a young science journalist. So there are people, but generally the sense that social media and technology gives you is that one can wing it. And that is why somebody like Chinmoy Da sometimes gets alarmed. I guess even I might be seeming like I'm winging it when I'm speaking to Chinmoy Da. But, you know, at least the attempt should be to be authentic to what one is doing, to be sincere and to be true to doing one's best. These are just simplifying words of which may be more highfalutin in academia. But that sincerity and authenticity is something that marks most of the conversations we have here, and I hope that always remains the way it is.
কাল যেমন শ্রীজাত বললো সেটা আপনিও বলতে মানে ইন্টারেস্টিং হবে আপনার পক্ষে। কালকে আমরা সায়েন্স আর লিটারেচার নিয়ে এখানে একটা সেশন ছিল, খুব ভালো। তো শ্রীজাত বললো কথাটা, যে ওকে বলিও অনেক ছোট আমার থেকে এবং ওকে চিনি, যে ওর ফর্মাল চর্চা তো মিউজিকে, মানে হি ইজ এ ট্রেন্ড মিউজিশিয়ান, আর ওই রিগার আর ডিসিপ্লিনটা ওকে লিখতে সাহায্য করে, সাহিত্যে সাহায্য করে, উইচ ইজ সাচ অ্যান ইন্টারেস্টিং পার্সপেক্টিভ। এভাবে তো আমরা ভাবি না যে এই যে কথাটা তুমি বললে যে রিগারটা এত ইম্পর্ট্যান্ট, এটা ডিফারেন্ট জিনিস ডিফারেন্ট লোককে ইনফ্লুয়েন্স করে, কিন্তু ডিসিপ্লিন এবং রিগার সবার পক্ষেই অত্যন্ত জরুরি। নাও চ্যাটজিপিটি থেকে লোকে 40-50 জনের ক্লাসে, এটা আমার অ্যাকচুয়ালি হয়েছিল, 40 জন একটা চিঠি লিখেছিল চ্যাটজিপিটি ব্যবহার করে। তো হোয়াট উড ইউ ডু, ফ্লাঙ্ক দ্য ক্লাস? আস্ক দেম টু রাইট অ্যাগেন। সো সেই জন্য এই ট্রুথফুল এবং অথেন্টিক আই থিঙ্ক ইটস ভেরি ভেরি ইম্পর্ট্যান্ট।
আচ্ছা, আমার একটা ঠিকই বলছেন, সবই সত্য। মালবিকা জানেন যে প্রত্যেকটা কনভারসেশনের আগে I get very nervous, and this shows actually my anxiety to come up to the expectations. Parbutu, hard work. Anushka, my wife, is there. She says to me, you spoke in Oxford and Cambridge and Sorbonne, but Calcutta University যাওয়ার সময় এত preparation কেন? I will be, it's a test of my knowledge. আমি পারি কিনা, আমি কিছু জানি কিনা, সেটা প্রমাণিত হবে। So what I wanted to add to what they said, the conversation is part of the inquiry, part of the critical spirit. That's very important. It's an extension of consciousness. চৈতন্যের প্রসার, মিছিমিছি করছি না। I want to extend my consciousness. So this is a dying, a crying need of the hour in a world which is withdrawing into a shell.
We have a time for a few questions. I hope somebody will. Yes, the lady in front, and then we'll go to the back.
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. It's so nice to hear you all speak. I wanted to harp on this question of authenticity that you mentioned and the fleeting attention span of everybody today. Even the older generation is using social media, and we don't even have the consciousness, the attention to wait and see a whole YouTube video. Now we want to go to a 2-minute reel. So that way, so I wanted to ask, combined with this, I think when you do conversations, it is very important to ask the right questions so that you can carve out information and the right kind of responses you're looking for. So how do you, with your how do you do that process of question selection to actually carve out an authentic response from the people you're talking to? Because they also, because you're dealing with celebrities, sometimes they also have an image to uphold. So how do you ensure with your questions that an authentic response is
actually,
gained?
the book could have had a subtitle, In Quest of Authenticity, in search of authenticity. Nothing is authentic. We are searching for it. We are racking our brains for it. And Malavika would know, perhaps, and Paroma too, because I've attacked them beforehand. What is important is, I had a conversation with a Turkish author. I read her work, line by line, long conversations. How do we start? What would be the first line? What would be the last line? I structured my thought with Mihaela and, Daphne Suman, so that I know her mind. She says, no, this is not the right question. You are missing the wood for the trees. So that's how I structure my thought. Try to. I said this is a quest for authenticity. Nothing is authentic. How do we know what is authentic? How do we know what is authentic? But I'm trying to. So questions, when you ask, you just look at the book, turn over the pages, and you will see that these questions are sort of, it comes out of the recesses of the psyche to someone who is waiting for this question. He's almost waiting for this question. When Satyajit Ray, for the first time in his life, said, Shomik Bandyopadhyay himself told me, his interview was here, he opted out, and he said that, Satyajit Ray said, externalization of states of mind. Such a beautiful expression, which would have satisfied an Antonio Fellini. So this is how you sort of prepare yourself mentally and try to enter the spirit. Not easy, but one tries.
পড়াশোনা করতে হয় একটু, হ্যাঁ, তৈরি হতে হয়, নইলে ইন্টারভিউ করা যায় না। এটা সবার ভেবে থাকা দরকার। সেকেন্ড রো, ইয়েস।
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. My question to Sarke, and 2 questions are there. So, first of all, translation literature, like translation is also a conversation. Like, সেখানেও একটা মানুষকে চেনা হচ্ছে, মানুষের ভাবটাকে ভাবান্তর করা হচ্ছে। স্যার, তাহলে যদি ভাষান্তর না বলে যদি আমরা ভাবান্তর বলি এবং ট্রান্সলেশনের জায়গায়, তাহলে স্যার কোনটা ইউজ করলে বেশি অথেন্টিক হবে আর বেশি অ্যাপ্রোপ্রিয়েট হবে, যেটা মানে মানুষটাকে চেনাচ্ছে, যে ক্যারেক্টারগুলোকে আরও চিনতে সাহায্য করছে, যেখানে ফিলিংসটা ট্রান্সলেট হচ্ছে আর ট্রান্সক্রিয়েট হচ্ছে। তো স্যার, আমরা একটা ওয়ার্ডে ট্রান্সলেশনের জায়গায় কি ওয়ার্ড ইউজ করতে পারি?
এটা পুরনো প্রশ্ন, এগুলো একটা ট্রান্সলেশনের তর্কে যাব না। এখানে জেনিত আছে, ট্রান্সলেশনের কথাটা বলাটায়, যে ডক্টর জেনিত রায়, ইজ হি হিয়ার? হি ট্রান্সলেটেড মোস্ট অফ দ্য ইন্টারভিউজ ফর মি। আচ্ছা, যেটা বলার বসো, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমি এখানে সত্যি মানে এটা বোধহয় সময় নষ্ট হবে খানিকটা। তো আমি ভাবান্তরটা ভাবতেই পারি না, এখন আর আমরা ভাবি না। After the Second World War, bhasha is important. After reading Wittgenstein, you will understand bhasha is important. Or whether we fall into the language trap or come out of it. I could have asked predictable question by falling into the Wittgensteinian language trap. Tar baire eshe, how to break free and create a space. Yes, but bhashantor to botei, bhasha ke baad diye to bhab diye to hobe na. Bhasha and bhab are, they coalesce with each other.
Sir, one more question, sir.
No, can we just take somebody else? Yes.
That gentleman has been raising
Yeah, he's been raising his hand at the...
Shupriyadi.
আমার একটা প্রশ্ন আছে চিন্ময়, তোমার একটা স্পিচে বলেছিলে যে তোমার বাবা অফিস থেকে এসে বদেলিয়ার পড়তেন, উনি কতটা তোমাকে ইনফ্লুয়েন্স করেছেন? কারণ আমার বাবা ওরকম বাড়িতে এসে অ্যারিস্টটল পড়তেন।
সেই তো ওই জেনারেশনটাই আলাদা ছিল। তো আমার বাবা বাড়ি এসে খালি গায়ে লুঙ্গি পরে উনি শোপেনহাওয়ার পড়তেন, লোককে দেখানোর জন্য নয়, বোঝার জন্য, আন্ডারলাইন। সেই বইগুলো যখন আমি পড়ি আমি দেখি দ্য ক্রাক্স অফ দ্য ম্যাটার ইজ আন্ডারলাইন্ড বাই মাই ফাদার। নিটশে, শোপেনহাওয়ার, গ্রিক মিথস অফ রবার্ট গ্রেভস পড়তেন। এটা তো হয়ই। বাবা যত বয়স হচ্ছে, মালা উড নো অ্যান্ড পরমা, ওদের কথা আরও বেশি মনে পড়ে। সো দে আর অলওয়েজ উইথ আস, not only the pastness of the past, as Eliot said, but its presence. They are with us all the time.
Hello. Oh, hello. Yeah, I think it's very interesting conversation, listening your point of view on different aspects, and there is no second opinion about effective conversation. Only question is, in the time and space, physical time and space that we are living in, how do you build trust? Because you said it is very important to build a trust before conversation so that other person open up, and that is one of the objective, for a effective conversation. Because you don't want a superficial conversation which happens in marriage hall or a party.
No, সেটা তো আমরা সবাই মিলেই বললাম। Malavika would know so well because she has arranged it very thoughtfully. There is Raju Raman here. She told me how Malavika sort of thinks about the whole thing. There's thinking. She's a thinking person. She sort of connects the dots and chooses it. And as far as I am concerned, trust আমি কি বলবো, what can I say? Hard work, respect, and identity. I forget myself and try to understand it from his point of view, and then only I get trust. But remember that, as she said, the youngest person is 60-year-old. So in the next volume, I would like to talk with G.N. Devi. I would like to talk with Ramchandra Guha, who's agreed to talk with me.
He's also over, I think they're over 60.
Over 60, but young people, yeah. So that's a problem. Let me see. But
চিন্ময়দা 30 থেকে শুরু করুন অন্তত, পরেরটা আরো কম।
I think there's one question there. Very quickly, we'll get to move.
Good afternoon. You stressed upon the difference between the image and the real. But if I think about my life, I have, like, even in my family, my dad is playing the role of a dad. So we are all like embodying a certain role. So আমি যখন বাড়িতে আমার মায়ের role play করছে, আমি তার ছেলের role play করছি. So this is also an image. Like, we are kind of. So where do you think the real is? Like, I have never encountered the real in a way. Except when I'm looking at trees, probably.
জানি না এর উত্তর জানি না বলেই your question becomes important. But there's a difference between the image that you were talking, the mental image you have of your mother, and she has of you, is different from the image I'm talking about. এটা ছবির জগৎ। সবাই দেখবেন সেলফি তুলছে, কেন তুলছে? এর সঙ্গে আমি আছি basking in reflected glory, সেটা তো আছেই। At the other side, collective একটা image তৈরি করা, that is different from the individual image you were talking about. I'm talking about the society of spectacle that Guy Debord talks about. Everything is spectacle, nothing is real. If I have a picture of yours in the newspaper, it's more important than you.
Such a good reply. Thank you. So